Alright guys, today I wanted to do a quick video doing a review of the Sawyer Mini water filter. I'm up here backpacking in the Flat Tops Wilderness in Colorado and brought with me the Sawyer. I'm right next to a lake, so there's plenty of water, but obviously I want to treat it. In the past, I've used boiling for all of my water. When I first started backpacking, I would just boil everything. And then I moved on to a MSR Hyperflow filter, and I enjoyed both of those. The Hyperflow puts out a lot of water, but I was also finding it was sometimes kind of a pain to get out and set up. And then when I'm using a hydration pack or a bladder inside my bigger pack, I was noticing that it would take some fair amount of extra time to go ahead and pull that out, fill up, and then put everything back together. Now, somewhere like this where I'm actually camped, that's not as big of a deal because I'm going to be here for about a day and a half. But it's more of a pain when I'm moving from one point to another and I need to get water en route. So, decided to try out the Sawyer Mini filter for a couple reasons. One, it's actually pretty inexpensive. I'll put a link to it because I don't remember the exact price offhand. But pretty inexpensive, and it's very lightweight. And what it does, it comes with a 16-ounce little pouch like this, and you can get bigger ones if you want. I'd recommend the larger 64-ounce. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But basically, it's just a simple filter. There's no pump, there's nothing to it. You just fill up your pouch, and then you either squeeze it into your container, or you can even just drink straight out of it. So, what are some of the things that I like about it? One, lightweight and inexpensive. I really do like that. I'll show you some close-ups of my kind of kit that I bring with me. If it's by myself, I'll usually bring one of the 16-ounce bladders, one of the 64, the little syringe to back flush it, and then the filter itself. On the end, you'll notice I've attached a piece that allows me to fill up my hydration pack without actually removing it. We'll talk about that a little more here in just a minute. So very lightweight, very easy to use. These pouches have caps for them. You can see the 64-ounce has a cap on it right now. So the nice thing, like this where I'm set up for a camp, is I can filter the water I need, and then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and fill the bladder back up, put the cap on, and then leave that over by camp. That way, especially if I'm not real close to water, I have the water with me. I have a full ration of filtered water, but then all I have to do in the morning, if I need to filter a little more, is just go straight from the pouch. I don't have to go back to the lake and fill it up. Another thing that I do like is these are very simple to use, just squeezing them. So you just squeeze it and it lets the water out. So let's get into some of the disadvantages specifically related to that. The flow of this filter compared to some of the pumps is much lower. So if you're going to fill up a quart Nalgene, that's going to take you a few minutes. If you're going to fill up a hydration bladder like I carry that's 3 liters, that's going to take some time. And then obviously, depending on how full you got your pouch, you're also likely to have to use at least 2 fills, even if you use the larger 64-ounce bladder. So the flow is quite a bit slower than the MSR filter that I'm used to using. Another disadvantage is I feel like this one clogs up quicker than the filter that I usually used in the past. So the syringe that you use to back flush it is very lightweight and it's easy to bring with you, but I do find that it's necessary to use that. I would say like this, I'm out here 2 nights. I'm probably going to have to back flush it 2 or 3 times to really keep the water flowing. And I'll show you how that's done. It's very simple. You basically just use clean water, and then from the outflow side of the filter, you use clean water in the syringe, and then you just push hard and flush the filter back out the opposite way that you filter the dirty water. Another disadvantage is the way that the bags are actually filled up. So I'm going to show you how I fill them up in the water, kind of moving my hand back and forth, and you can also scoop from your hand into the water. I found that probably one of the easiest ways to do it, if you have a extra pot or something like that available, is to scoop it up in the pot and then pour it into the bladder. If you can find a creek or something like that with a little bit of a waterfall, even just a small fall, that'll also make it easier to fill up. The problem I noticed is I took it hunting last year and it was down into the low to mid-teens for part of the trip. The water that we were using was nearly icing over. I was making sure to store the filter either close to my body or actually in my sleeping bag when I was sleeping to make sure it didn't freeze. So I wasn't worried about that. That's an issue with basically any filter that you use. But what was hard is with that nearly ice cold water and in a very cold environment, I didn't want to be putting my hands in the water if I didn't have to. So basically trying to fill that without putting my hands in with it was very difficult. If we had the pot, that was pretty much the way we had to fill the pouches. So it got a little tedious to do that every time. In a situation like that, the filter's a little bit easier because you can basically just put the suction end down in the water and then you can pump without actually getting yourself all that wet. So would I recommend the Sawyer water filter? Sure. It's actually a really good filter, again, especially if you look at the price and the weight. It's very hard to find a filter for the same cost as the Sawyer, especially that's going to work as well. I would suggest kind of getting used to it because there is some learning curve to filling those pouches up right. But again, that's really not that big of a deal. It was more of just kind of a personal frustration with me. Also make sure with any water filter that you keep from freezing it. So if you're going to be backpacking, hiking, anything like that in the colder environment, make sure that you don't freeze it. And that's basically any filter that uses paper tubes has the risk of cracking and ruining the filter if it freezes. Another thing I would suggest, if you get the mini filter, make sure you get those 64-ounce bladders, because that's going to allow you to transport a whole lot more water or filter a larger amount of water at one time. I actually think that they're so lightweight that it's very easy to keep one or two of those with you without adding a lot of weight, especially when they're empty. Another advantage with those bladders is I talked about bringing them back to camp with me and having them ready for the morning. But if you are camping somewhere where water is few and far between, you can also, when you do stop at a water source, you can fill up not only your bladder, but then fill up those pouches, however many you have with you, and it's a lot of extra weight that way. But if you needed to carry that extra water to camp, then you potentially have enough water to, cook, clean if necessary, and then potentially fill a hydration bladder or bottles a couple different times. So I definitely would recommend, if you're going to use it, get some of those bigger pouches. But it is a very good filter for the money, so I would recommend it. You can look at some of the other pumps or other options. I would probably consider a pump if I was with a big group, because I think I can pump water faster. And then you could either get some kind of a MSR dromedary bag or something like that to pack extra water if you need. But the Sawyer makes a great filter, especially for one or two people, and especially if you're not wanting to actually stop and pull everything out of your bag every time you want to fill a hydration bladder. So that's it for the Sawyer Mini water filter review. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, hit the like button and stay tuned for more content.